Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode with Someday with me, Jay Barsky. This episode's guest is fellow podcaster and founder of Rebel Creative Studio, Leigha Hager. I came across her podcast when she was interviewing a friend of mine that I had on a previous podcast. And after listening to the interview and listening to a couple of episodes and learning more about Leigha Hager, I thought she would be great on this program and everything that she knows about like entrepreneurship and just her affiliation with public relations. I thought she would be great on this podcast. So you'll hear us talk about her journey into entrepreneurship, advice on creating your own reality, and everything else in between. With that being said, I hope you enjoy our Someday with Leigha Hager. Leigha Hager, what's up? How are you doing?
Hi, I'm so good. Thank you so much for bringing me on to reason with you a little tonight. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm glad to have you on. I kind of want to mention that I came across your podcast and I've got just interested in everything that you have to offer. And I think like a lot of the listeners I have for this podcast would definitely benefit from everything you're doing. So before I kind of want to get into your podcast, you're the owner or creator of Rebel Creative Studio. So do you want to explain to our listeners what that's about?
So, Rebel Creative Studio is what I refer to as a micro ad agency. And basically, that houses everything I do creatively, all the services I provide, which range from advertising campaigns to digital marketing to I also do a lot of music promotion and promote events. And that also includes like graphic design, website development, branding, photography for products and such. And that's really why I call it a studio, because everything creative you need, I provide, or a member of my team provides. And kind of my vision for creating Rebel Creative Studio is I wanted to, in the media world, there's not that many women in there. It's definitely changing and progressing a lot.
Hmm.
And I've always been in the belief that the way people are portrayed in media is how they're treated in society. Especially women, like how women have been portrayed in movies and photography and magazines. And, why have we been portrayed a certain way? Probably because, it wasn't us behind the lens. It wasn't us writing the script for so long.
Hmm.
So, in that sense, I'm trying to rewrite the narrative, rewrite the script, and just kind of put the power, in women's hands to kind of, tell our story and represent us in a better way. And that's not just for women, that's also goes for minorities and, anyone in my community that I want to uplift in a positive light.
You mentioned that you've done events and you're based in South Florida. I am too. We're probably a little far away from each other. But so do you have any big events that you're working on now or that you've done previously?
Yes. So since the beginning of, there's an event called it started as Dubwise Jamaica.
Hmm.
And the basis of that, it was founded by Jason Panton and Protege, and it's a roots dub reggae music event. And that was really started probably 8 or 9 years ago now, with the idea to uplift, the up and coming reggae artist and to
Hmm.
have a space specifically for roots and culture, roots reggae music. Because as you know, how reggae has been changing, it's, super diverse. There's a lot of different sounds in the reggae community. So this is the space created for, dub and roots. And then being here in South Florida, that franchise out into a night we have every Wednesday in Wynwood called Dubwise Miami. So I do, digital marketing for that event.
Hmm.
Um, there's also a sister event to that called The Shrine, and that also happens in Miami. And what's cool about that event is it's Afro beats with a little
Okay.
bit of Caribbean flair. Um, Afrobeats is on fire. It's hot right now. It's
Hmm.
and I love how it's kind of infusing with Jamaican artists, Caribbean sounds. It's really exciting. So those are two of the main events I do here in South Florida. In addition to I work with 9 Mile Music Festival, which hopefully we'll be back soon. Took a little break from COVID. But that's one of my favorite events to work with as well.
You got me excited about Afrobeats because I
Yes.
kind of talked about this in a previous podcast about like hyping yourself up. And
Yeah.
one song that I've liked that's a really like hype me up song that I like is Essence by Wizkid. So
Hmm.
I like, and I go through Wizkid's music and stuff. So like, yeah, I'll keep an eye out for an event if you have a Wizkid or something.
Yes. We're trying to bring these different artists in. And the cool thing is it's every Saturday night. So, please come through. And it's also
Okay.
associated with Walshy Fire. So he comes in, we have DJs come from Africa, from Nigeria, from LA. So it's really it's infused with an authentic sound. It's
Mhm.
not just random DJs playing the music. It's people from the sounds themselves. So it's a really, really cool event.
I'll be happy to check it out one of these days. But
Yeah.
so going kind of back to your company, and you kind of mentioned like, off air about like your name and the association of it. And I
Hmm.
guess there's some inspiration of like the movie Star Wars and the Star Wars franchise because you like your logo and you mentioned like your name. So are you like a fan of the Star Wars franchise?
You know, Luckily, yes, because I'm named after Star Wars. I'm named after Princess Leia,
Okay.
who is, yeah, and my dad named me after Princess Leia, who is, arguably one of the most famous rebels of all time in media and storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And she fought an evil empire. And it's just interesting how I really, they say like your namesake, like what does your name mean? Maybe in
Yeah.
some ways we're destined to live up to our name. It's interesting because, I see a lot of myself in her. So that's where the rebel comes from. Um, Also, if you go to Jamaica, like you just get a little nickname. It's just like an initiation process or something like that. I don't know. But my first trip to Jamaica, just reasoning with some people, and someone just started calling me Soul Rebel.
Okay.
I'm like, yeah, I'm like, you know what? I actually like that makes
Yeah.
sense. I feel that. You're a soul rebel. I'm like, yeah, I am a soul rebel. So that was the play on that. And this is for the real Star Wars fans. I'm not sure. Do you watch Star Wars
Oh yeah.
yourself?
Yeah.
Okay, so the X, you tell me, right? That the X logo, because the rebel fighters are X-wing fighters.
Mhm.
I call the X-wing, because when they're, in space and they're flying, the wings open up to an X shape. So
Yeah.
that's and then of course, the chromosomes, the two X's represents the female. So it's a bunch of symbolism in there for me that came together well, I think.
Do you have a favorite movie of all the Star Wars films that came out?
Oh man, listen, it's so interesting because when I go back and watch the older film, I just love the beauty of the storyline and
Mhm.
how it ties together. And so even with these new series that are coming out on Disney Plus,
Mhm.
I go back and watch the original movies to like refresh on the storyline and little details.
Okay.
Yeah, but honestly, I love the Kenobi series that was just released through Disney Plus. I don't know if you've seen that, but it kind of tells the story of even Princess Leia when she was young and how Obi-Wan Kenobi kind of watched over her and
Okay.
protected her. Yeah, I think that's my right now, that's definitely my favorite.
I used to get into, like, a lot of, like, Star Wars fan fiction, like, a lot of the, like, adult
Mhm,
books and, like,
right.
young fiction. But, yeah, I'm Star Wars buff, like,
Nice.
could talk about Star Wars. I think my favorite one had to be I think it's a lot of people's favorite, like, Return of the Jedi.
Right.
It was just, like, so much closure.
Classic, iconic scenes and lines from that one, right?
Yeah. Were you a fan of, like, the, like, most recent trilogy that came out?
Absolutely. I've never seen a Star Wars series or movie. The only one that I didn't love was maybe the Solo one. I feel like that could have been
Okay.
a little bit more exciting, or
Yeah. Yeah.
but I didn't hate it. I wasn't mad about it, but it was a little bit underwhelming for me.
Yeah. I
But
can see
I
that,
just
yeah.
love, yeah, any extension of that plot line is just, yeah, I'm a total nerd about it for sure. And I actually have a younger brother who's also named after Star Wars. His name is Ben. So
Mhm.
that's another trivia for the
Okay.
real Star
Okay.
Wars fans. And I just got a new puppy who I named Kenobi. So
Okay.
you could
Oh,
say I'm a
wow.
fan.
Wow.
You could say I'm a fan.
It all comes together. No, that's cool.
Right.
I mentioned earlier about like how I came across like your podcast, which is called
Mhm.
Rebelology. So do you want to explain like what's that podcast about?
Totally. So, I think I just kind of came to I actually did a reading, right, with whatever you want to call her, whether it be an intuitive, oracle, card reader. Um I do a lot of work with her. And then I had this one session where she said to me, um, you carry the voices, a lot of voices of your ancestors, and they're trying to speak through you. And I think that kind of served at the time as like explanation for some of the anxiety I felt about doing creative work and just, kind of guiding me along that conversation. And so, you know, for me, I always felt like one of the most important ways we can make change is just open a platform for conversation, for safe conversation, for loving conversation, and not be sure to not create this, this echo sound room. You know, we need to have conversations with people we may not agree with. And I also want to just create a platform for me to share things I'm interested in, for things I believe in, for things I want to be talked about.
Mhm.
Because in this day and age, like that's the beauty of the internet and, Zoom and all of these things is we can all have our own channels to have our own voice. So why would I not be true to myself and my ancestors and, you know, let that speak to the world, let that serve as a place. And what's interesting is it's a lot of great conversations. It basically my podcast fuses my interest, which is female entrepreneurship, spirituality, and all things basically rebel and reggae music from there. So that's basically rebelology in a nutshell. And you know, I'm always open to guests coming in to talk about a topic that they're interested in or knowledge information they want to share with the world. So yeah, it's that platform itself has been a blessing so far.
So what would you say are some podcasts that kind of inspired you to do your own podcast?
Yeah, great question. So when I started listening to podcasts in general, I started listening to one by Sophia Amoruso called Girl Boss. And basically that platform brought in female entrepreneurs, female business owners, and they talked about their inspiration to start their own companies,
Mhm.
which was super inspiring for me. As you know, when you're creating your own businesses, it's you always need that infusion of inspiration and just really encouragement. And I just really liked her platform and hearing her stories. And yeah, the idea kind of came from there, honestly.
Do you have any podcasts you listen to as for like music since you said you're a fan of reggae music?
I don't really listen to any for reggae music right now.
Mhm.
I think the one that I like true crime ones. I love
Okay.
Oprah's Soul Sessions.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. Like I know that's one of the most popular ones out there in general, but I really love it. So, I'm all about, having it on in the background when I'm working or, showering, cleaning. I love to have a good soul session playing.
Yeah, I liked your podcast that you had. You interviewed Ursula Munchie from Reggaeville.
Yes.
She's nice to talk to. I like Munchie.
Yes, I know. I just love her. Every time she's just a little ball of like bright energy and joy and you can't be in a bad mood around her with her around, I should
Yeah.
say, and I really love that conversation, because I always told her like you're interviewing everyone,
Yeah.
right? But who is Munchie? Let me turn the mic on
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
and see how you like it,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, that was a really great conversation, and of this season, yeah, second season.
No, I was telling her because I mean, as you mentioned, she's done so much like podcast or not podcast, but interviews with people,
Right.
and like you I mean, obviously she's an expert at it and she's just like nice to talk to. So when you finally have the opportunity to talk to her, you're like, wow, I can see why people are so like friendly and open to you because she's like just like so nice to talk to.
That's true. There's something about her that disarms you, where you don't feel like you have to really
Yeah.
be on guard. Like she's gonna be genuine and true to the cause, true to the mission. I
Yeah.
think is like an important thing that you pick up with her, right?
Yeah. I love Munchie. Yeah. So you mentioned like about your in span of reggae music, and it's not something I promote too much anymore. But like I'm big on reggae music too, and always trying to find out like live music going on. So
Right.
what kind of like reggae music, or like you mentioned, there's different genres. So like, what kind of specific genres do you listen to? What kind of specific artists?
I love authentic Jamaican reggae music. Um, I'm not You're not gonna find like a Soja Revolution on my playlist necessarily. I don't have anything against that music at all. It's
Mm-hmm.
just not what I vibe to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting that discussion in general, like what is the genre of reggae anymore? You have like Stick Figure in there, you have Soja in there, you have a protege Kabaka who are actually from Jamaica, singing music. And then also our dancehall artists and music are also looped into that genre. So it's interesting, like how we should evolve the genre and how we describe it too, right?
Mm-hmm.
But listen, I like Kabaka Pyramids just released an album that I
Okay,
love. If you haven't heard that, yeah,
I didn't.
great, great songs on there. Some great features with Jamiri Morgan, Buju. So you're gonna if you listen to my playlist, it's interesting. And people make fun of me for this, but you're gonna hear a Kabaka, then you might hear uh Akibeka or a Midnight next. You might hear an Alkaline next, dance hall. And you're for sure gonna hear a lot of Shensia. So you have to be prepared for like those are my moods.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if anybody, you mentioned like playlists, so is this on like Spotify if anybody would be interested on listening to it?
I don't have a playlist I've curated,
Okay.
just as far as like what I'm playing, on my platform that I just listen to personally.
Have you gone to any like live concerts to any of the artists that you mentioned?
Yeah. Well, recently, live music's coming back.
Yeah.
But there was what I will say, I think the most recent one is Kamani Marley had an event this year in March called Maestro Marley Cup, and Leela Ike performed. That was here in Miami.
Okay.
Yeah, Leela Ike performed, and
Mhm,
I was like almost entranced by her voice, by her
mhm.
stage presence. I just really love her music. Like every time I hear her live, I really connect with it. And Jesse Royal also performed um, at that event, so I got to
Nice.
see him live. I maybe only seen him maybe twice live, but that's always great. So, but yeah, I love live music. I'm looking forward to the festival's coming back full swing next year. I hope. I just saw today Kabaka Pyramid is coming to Fort Lauderdale. I think it's November 12th.
Okay.
Go back and look, but with Joe Mersa. So that might be the next one.
'Cause so I kinda wanna go back to you mentioned about, like, female entrepreneurship, so that, you
Mhm.
started with, your company, so what kind of inspired you to just go on your own and start your entrepreneurship and your own company?
Yeah. So the raw answer to that, to be honest, is I just don't enjoy working for other people.
Mhm.
I just don't like it's, I always say if you're not doing something to build your own empire, even if it's part-time after you go work for someone else, like you're playing yourself, and we all have our own skills. And to me, it's like, what do you value in life? Me personally, I value freedom. I value being able to flow throughout my day in a schedule. I believe we're the creators of our own lives. So that's the life I want to create for myself, so and that's just the truth. Um, as far as starting a business, and also I think as a naturally creative person, um I have to feel like I'm birthing my own projects in a sense. that's fulfilling to me. And I feel like anyone who's aligned with their own mission personally is probably going to go down the path of entrepreneurship in one degree or the other.
Oh, that's awesome. And something you said that I really liked was just like you creator of your own life. So stuff like that, I say to people, and it's true. Like whatever you want to be in your life, like
Mhm.
create that, like become that. If you can vision that, then that's what you can be. Like create that.
Yeah, no, it's 100% true. We create our reality, whether that be through what we're manifesting, whether that be through what we're thinking about, whether that be what we're praying for, wishing for, or actual physical things we're doing throughout the day, as far as what jobs do we want to take, who do we decide to date. We really create that, and it is completely possible. And I think we're as a mass of people, is promoted to be disenfranchised in that sense, that we
Mhm.
don't have the ability or the empowerment to do so. But
Yeah.
that's not true.
Thank you for sharing all of that. Another thing that I saw that you are working on that you have is a Himsa boutique company. What inspired you to start that?
Yes, that's the name of my boutique that I started, um, maybe close to 10 years ago now, actually. Yeah. So ahimsa, by the way, is Sanskrit for do no harm, right? So that kind of came a place from a place of eating plant based, um, trying to use sustainable products and packaging where you can, and also just put good into the world. So I've always been a fan of working with crystals and raw gemstones and materials. And I would always just kind of make them, for myself or friends. I grew up in a creative family. Honestly, they're always making something. Like everyone in my family has their own little niche, their own little specialty. And I've always been drawn to crystals even before I realized the power that they have as a child, right? So I just, started making them. And at that time, a platform called Etsy was pretty new, which was a great, online marketplace for people to sell their creations without having to have a website, without having to have, brick and mortar location. And so it just kind of birthed from there and has evolved to me making all sorts of products now. And you know, basically just delivering, certain energies and powers through the crystals that I work with, through the herbs that I work with.
So outside of just entrepreneurship, one thing that I saw that you do that's pretty cool is so like you have a social club or what's called a rebel book club. So what books do you normally read? And maybe there's some that you can recommend for our listeners.
Yeah. So, I've always been a fan of reading. And what would happen was I would post the books that I was reading, on my social media, and a bunch of my friends or just, people following me or in the community would say, "Oh, it's that book. Where can I find it?" And it would kind of spark conversations in my DMs or just through text messages when people would,
Hmm.
read the book, like, "Hey, what did you think about this?" Or "That was a really great insight," or whatever. So I started the book club about 3 years ago. And, it's a small group of close friends that are now, some people I met that are friends of mine now that came in through my book club. But basically, it's all female empowerment books, and that ranges from books about just core feminist issues. One that we read this year is called Hood Feminism, which I really like because it's a different perspective on feminism, not just from the white woman's perspective, right? So I always think it's important to incorporate other people's perspectives,
Hmm.
in anything that we do, and make sure what I do is intersectional as much as possible. So that was one from this year. Another one was called For the Love of Men by Liz Plank. And basically, that reimagines what we define masculinity as. How are we raising men in this country? And kind of, the ways that what has now become toxic masculinity and all the issues that creates for men and women and the planet and so on and so forth. So that was interesting. Um, and then I also love to incorporate books on spirituality. One of my favorite authors, her name is Rebecca Campbell. and she has books called Light is the New Black. And one that we read this year in my book club is called Letters to a Starseed, which is basically, trying to remember why we incarnated on Earth. Why did we incarnate right now on this time, in this time, and with the people who are else, here. There's a great mission that we have been that we volunteered for. So, and then some books, just about entrepreneurship, like You're a Badass at Making Money. I started the year reading that this year, by Jen Sincero. So again, entrepreneurship, female empowerment, spirituality.
Are you into any audiobooks?
So I'm what they consider an elder millennial,
Mhm.
and I love paper. I love turning the page. Uh, I cannot do audiobooks. I have tried. I did a long drive actually recently, about 2 weekends ago. It was a 9-hour drive, and I listened to a little bit of an audiobook then, but I didn't love it. It's not for me. I need the physical book myself.
No, I agree with you. I had a friend a while back was telling me, because I was just trying to get back into reading, and she kept recommending me like audio like books, and like even the books that I currently have that's on paper, like she said I can convert it to an audiobook, and I was like, no, I prefer just like making the time and just actually reading.
Right.
I didn't want to listen to it. Like I want to put into work and actually reading that book and sponging that knowledge.
Exactly.
So in preparing for this interview, I do a little research and everything. And I read a recent article about you, and something that you mentioned is that your grandmother has been like a big inspirational figure to you. So do you want to explain to our listeners how she been so inspirational for you?
Yeah. So, what's interesting is I think in her time, maybe she wouldn't have considered herself a feminist, but looking back on everything she did, she's the first feminist I knew. She ran her own business in partnership, with her husband, my grandfather. She worked, while having small children. I remember being in there with her when she was running the business, and women that worked with her, they would bring their children into work and just work along with them. And I just think that looking back on everything that she was doing in her community, she was on the board of the bank, and was part of the Rotary Club. So that's really how she kind of guides me, inspires me to be, you know very active in what I'm doing, be passionate in what I'm doing.
Thank you for sharing that. As you know, this is a motivational podcast, and one thing I
Yeah.
like to ask our guests is like there are some things that drive them and motivate them, and things that kind of like relieve their stress. So, starting off, so what do you normally do to relieve any stress that you may have?
Okay, so I literally tell my girlfriends this. So if I'm having a weird vibe, like a weird energy day, right? Because sometimes that happens. You just wake up to a weird email, or you know, just something's not going quite right.
Hmm.
My trick that works 100% of the time is I go through the Starbucks drive-through, get my large iced coffee, and I will blast out Shensia music.
Okay.
And I swear by it, because it's like empowerment songs. It's like, she's just a good, woman to be listening to her lyrics in that moment. It just gives you a vibe. As I always say, there's nothing that a Starbucks run and a Shensia song, play Shenyang anthem or Trending Gal won't fix. I have yet to find a mood that hasn't fixed. How about that?
So, are there any practices that kind of help motivate you and drive you?
Yes. So I'm a big believer, advocate for having your mind, body, and soul in balance. For me, it's all three of those things that I need to work on to be successful in my life, to feel accomplished, right? So for me, that starts with my diet. I eat a plant-based diet. That way my body is strong, my mind is clear, my karma is clear. And then I work out because, to train my body to keep it strong. I go to UFC Fit Gym here in South Florida. So I do a lot of boxing and kickboxing, which I call that therapy,
Yeah.
you know, because you're releasing so much anxiety and it's a great workout. And
Mhm.
it's also a great skill to have as a woman. I feel like you should be able to defend yourself.
Mhm.
Um, and also, traditional therapy, they always tell you to let your guard down. And I love that. And, and the kind of training I do is like, keep your guard up, keep your guard up. I always laugh at that. Um, so yeah, for me, like I said, mind, body, soul starts with the body, the mind follows, and then the soul will be enlightened from there.
Well, you mentioned about exercising, so anything as for like your diet and like things that you eat or consume to help you think that could really like help our listeners?
I believe in the power of a plant-based diet. I believe that that keeps our karmas clear. We're not consuming anything dead. We're eating living things. And more than that, it's good for the planet too. So stay plant-based for sure. And just, try to eat organic and local. Um, that's my diet. I stick to that. Every once in a while, I may have, a little bit of dairy, but overall, that's why I like to use the phrase plant-based versus, just vegan.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, though, you have to do what works for you.
Yeah.
Listen to your body, watch the signs and find something that's going to work for you.
And do you have any like routine practices that you do like every day as for like anything specifically like you set a time that you go to sleep, something you do before you go to sleep or after, something like your workout regimen, so anything like that?
Yeah, I'm not that person. I totally believe in going with the flow. I'm a Pisces, I'm a water sign, I'm an ocean sign, right? So
Mhm.
for me personally, I thrive in that environment where I can flow. So, if I'm super tired one evening, I'll go to bed early. But as a creative mind, sometimes I do the best work late at night, like designing or coming up with ideas.
Mhm.
So I'm going to listen to my body and my energy and do that thing. As far as what guides me and organizes me, I'll put down, I always have a list, on my wall in my office area that shows the things I need to get done. And then I'll, for example, give myself a goal of get in 4 workouts this week, and get these things done. Whenever I feel like doing them or it works out best for my mood or schedule or energy that day, as long as I get them done by the end of the week, that's really what works for me. Like I said, that's just my personality. I love to be in a state of flowing, not forcing.
Since we're wrapping up, is there anything you're working on right now that our listeners should watch out for?
Yes, so definitely season 2 of Rebelology. I have a lot of great conversations coming up. Um, as far as other extensions of my business, I'm launching a digital media channel of that very soon. Basically, it's going to bring a lot of affordability and um, convenience to anyone with a small business looking to create social media content, and get content out there. So I'll be launching that very soon. I'm very excited about that.
Great. Yeah, can't wait
Yeah.
for all of that. Leah, any final words you want to leave to our listeners to help motivate them in pursuing their someday in their lives?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the game changing things for me as a creative person, as an entrepreneur, was when I realized that, because it takes a lot of courage and bravery to put things out into the world that you create. You feel like, oh, are people going to like this? Are they going to get it? Are they going to vibe with it? Are they going to buy it?
Mhm.
Right? But guess what? That's none of your business. Like once you look at it like that, it's your mission, your duty, your responsibility to create and birth things that are in alignment with your truth and your mission. Let the universe and everything else do the rest. Don't worry about those things. It's your business only to put those things into the world. So once you get past that of what are people going to think? Are they going to judge me? Are they going to like it? That's the game changer for me. And to me, that's what takes you into, from the someday into today.
Leigha Hager, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time and
Oh,
doing this
great.
interview with me.
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I'm sure our paths will cross sooner or later.
So thanks for listening to our episode with Leigha Hager. Follow her on all her socials, which you may find in the episode notes. I hope you enjoy your episode. Please rate and comment on the podcast to help make it grow. If you wish to follow me, all my socials are at I am Jay Barsky on everything. Thank you for listening to another episode of Someday with Jay Barsky, and I'll see you soon.